is the DeFi Decoded podcast by 9 Point Partners in cooperation with Prophecy DeFi. The ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast should not be taken as investment advice. Always consult with your financial advisor before investing.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DeFi Decoded. I'm Alex Tapscott, coming to you live from sunny Las Vegas, here with Andrew Young, my co-host. And we are delighted to have Sunny Aggarwal on the program today. Sunny is someone that I've known for a few years in the crypto and DeFi space. He's a visionary, he's a business builder, and he has created one of the fastest growing DeFi protocols in the world today. It's called Osmosis, built within the Cosmos ecosystem. And Sunny, our timing is very good. We're recording this on Wednesday, October 27th. And just a couple of hours ago, it was announced that Paradigm, the huge crypto VC firm, is leading a major funding round into your project, and that it's the first time that they've funded an AMM outside of the Ethereum ecosystem, which I think is a pretty big milestone for the entire DeFi space, for them, and obviously for you guys as well. So thanks for joining us on the program. Why don't you maybe just start with Osmosis. What is it? What are you trying to build? And why do you think it's had so much early success?
Thanks for having me on. So Osmosis is it's like the premier DEX in the Cosmos ecosystem, which I know, Alex, you've been, following for a long time. I was actually one of the core developers of Cosmos, and I've been working in this project and ecosystem for about 4.5 years now. And when we're building Cosmos, our vision was this world of like interconnected blockchains and application-specific blockchains. And I'd been working on this like core technologies such as Tendermint and Cosmos SDK and IBC for many years. And then about last year, I was watching DeFi Summer happen on Ethereum. And I was like, okay, it's time, how do we start bringing this stuff onto Cosmos? And so that's why I left the sort of core Cosmos development team and, started figuring out like, okay, how do we start, we have all these like core fundamental pieces of technology now. How do we start building real applications with it? And, we went through a couple of different like ideas and essentially settled on Osmosis as a DEX, which, looking at the Ethereum ecosystem, we saw like, there was a couple of main primitives that, that started the DeFi on Ethereum ecosystem. I guess, arguably, I think the two base ones were Maker and Uniswap. And so we're like, all right, let's start building one of them. And so that's why we started with the AMM. And, we started basically working on it back in January of this year. It actually technically started as a hackathon project last November by one of the co-founders, Tony. And he built it as a hackathon project, a MVP of it. And then this January, we were like, hey, let's go all in on this. And so we were building it and, we were able to ship it pretty quickly. We launched in June of this year. And so we've been live for about 4 months now. And just been seeing some great success. And it's really mostly, the most exciting part is finally seeing like, I've been working on Osmosis for maybe 9 months now, but really I see it as like the culmination of a lot of the work we've been doing on Cosmos as a whole over the last 4 years.
Yeah, well, I think of Cosmos, as the core infrastructure. And I think a lot of people rightly have been very excited about it for a long time. And a lot of different projects connect into Cosmos using IBC. But Osmosis feels like one of the first killer dApps that exist inside of the ecosystem. And I think it's sort of interesting. Our listeners are a real mixed bag, Sunny. We've got some folks who are very crypto native and others that are still new to this space. And I think you raised an interesting point, which is, last year, DeFi Summer was happening on Ethereum. And even in January of this year, I think something like 99% of all DeFi activity was happening on Ethereum. And now it's more like 70%. And that's not criticism of Ethereum. It's just a revealing fact that this is growing very quickly, and there's lots of other platforms, right? But I think what's important and so interesting about Cosmos and Osmosis is it's not like you're trying to build something in a new silo to kill Ethereum or something. It's all about interoperability and composability, and the idea that we're going to have this one internet of blockchains. Is that how you see it as well?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in a way, I think all of this is sort of part of the Cosmos ecosystem. Because Cosmos was just this idea of many interconnected chains, and so I see all the whether it's Ethereum or Solana or anything that is able to talk to this this mesh of blockchains. I think that is part of the Cosmos. And so yeah. Wait, so what was the exact question again?
Well, just to talk about how important is interoperability
right.
to what you're building, basically.
Right. Yeah. So I think interoperability is extremely important. I think that currently most applications are sort of built to provide services to the assets on a single blockchain. So you have Uniswap that's providing a DEX for Ethereum based assets, and then you have QuickSwap on Polygon and Serum on Solana. But really, we want to build something that provides something to the entire ecosystem. So I can trade Ethereum assets with Solana assets or with Cosmos-based assets. And so to do that, we need to have one, sort of a one-stop shop, which is able to connect to all of these different places and provide and source liquidity from all of them and create one place. And this whole multi-chain vision, I guess 4 years ago when we started working on it, it was this very radical idea, right? Where it was, we were going around saying hey, back then everyone was okay, this Ethereum thing, this single chain is going to scale and it's going to put all the world's applications are going to be on it. And we were saying oh, we don't know about that. We see this multi-chain vision going out. And that back then it's a very radical idea, but I think today that's the default. That's what everyone assumes. That's how the blockchain world is developing. I guess one thing that makes our vision of interoperability still a little bit different than what maybe most people have is I put it into two camps. I call this the multi-chain vision versus the interchain vision. And what the multi-chain vision is sort of this idea that we'll have all these many generalized blockchains. And you'll have applications just deploying multiple versions of themselves on all these different chains. So you see this on DeFi applications like SushiSwap or Aave, where SushiSwap is going around and just redeploying itself on, they have an instance on Ethereum, they have one on Arbitrum, on Polygon, on BSC. They just have different SushiSwaps on every chain, but all of these ecosystems are kind of, separate. And it's what they're essentially doing is just splitting their liquidity across all of these different chains, across all these instances. The interchain vision is this idea of application specific blockchains where, we're not saying hey, we're going to go deploy Osmosis on all these different chains. We're saying that, hey, we're going to have one chain that is the Osmosis chain and it's going to connect to every chain, but then those assets will come onto our chain. And this way we don't split our liquidity across all these spots. And I think there's people who get this as well. I guess the DeFi blue chip gets it is Compound, right? Where Compound is also saying oh, we're not going to go redeploy on 20 different chains. We're going to go build Compound chain, and that's going to connect to all of these different blockchains. And so I think that's going to be sort of the interesting thing to watch now as this multi-chain world is comes to view. Is it going to be this multi-chain or is it going to be the interchain? And we're betting very heavily on this application specific interchain.
Yeah, that's a great sort of thesis. I actually totally agree with it too. I think and it's kind of horizontal expansion versus almost vertical expansion if you're kind of an application. I think something like SushiSwap, which was obviously kind of just born as a fork of Uniswap, it's a little bit more commoditized in some ways versus something like Osmosis, which has a lot of really interesting features I actually wanted to dive a little bit into that because I think one of the coolest things about Osmosis is this idea of superfluid staking and MEV resistance. Do you want to talk a little bit about those features?
Andrew, do you want to maybe define those first for our audience?
Well, I'll actually let
Sunny. Or maybe Sunny, you want to just give us a plain explanation of those two concepts?
Yeah, sure. So I love that you mentioned this like horizontal versus vertical thing, because I think that's actually one of the main theses we had about this application specific blockchains, which was, Osmosis is sort of this like bet on vertical integration, where on other DEXs that are building on other people's platforms, they sort of only control the application layer of their product. But on Osmosis, we not only do we control the application layer, but we also control the blockchain itself. And then we control the front end. Our team also maintains the Kepler, which is like the biggest wallet for the Cosmos ecosystem. And so by having this like vertical stack of like all the way down from the low level up to the user experience, I think we are able to provide a UX that's like outshines what other DEXs are able to do. And we're also able to provide certain features that other DEXs are not able to do, such as superfluid staking and threshold encryption. So I can go dive into those two. So superfluid staking, the first one is, it's this idea that, today, when you have the native token of Osmosis, OSMO, so Osmosis is a proof of stake chain, and you have to like stake OSMO to help secure the network. If I have OSMO, I have to choose between staking or LPing. I can either go stake it to help secure the network and earn staking rewards, or go put it in liquidity pools, earn liquidity rewards and the swap fees and things like that. This is a kind of required on other chains where like the application layer is above the protocol. But what's cool about Osmosis is because it's this integrated stack, our proof of stake system is aware of the DeFi applications that are built on top of it. And this enables us to do something very cool, which is I can have Osmo and some other asset, let's say Atoms. We can put those into a liquidity pool. And what you get back when you do that is an LP share that represents your share of that liquidity pool. And then we can actually go stake the LP share itself. So instead of staking pure Osmo, what we're doing is we're staking DeFi assets that have Osmo underlying them. And we can do this because our proof of stake system can like understand like what is this DeFi asset. And so that's really cool because now it'll, people no longer have to choose between staking and LPing. They'll be able to get more rewards from doing both. And it will help bolster the security of the network because we'll have, more assets, all the DeFi assets also helping secure the chain itself. So that's one thing that we're really excited about. The other feature which you mentioned was threshold encryption. So threshold encryption was actually sort of where we started Osmosis with, where one of our theses was, we had this idea of like, when we were trying to figure out how do we bring DeFi to Cosmos, we're like, okay, what is going to be like the killer feature here? And we thought about, okay, when we started working on blockchains, there was these like 3 things we wanted to work on, right? There was proof of stake, scalability, and privacy. And so proof of stake, I think we've done it, right? I think every chain that launches today uses proof of stake, and that's done. Scalability, I think, it's well underway. I think a lot of it's done, but I think there's a long way to go, but there's a lot of people working on it and it's making good headway. Privacy is sort of like the last one, which was like, that's like not as far as long as we thought it would be. There's a lot of good theoretical work done, but like in practice, there's not a lot of blockchains that have like great privacy features built in. And so from that, we were like, okay, what privacy features do we want to start with? And from talking to users, what we came to the conclusion is the main thing, one of the biggest things people are worried about is like front running and MEV on Ethereum. And so we're like, hey, what if we can design a privacy solution to fix this? Where normally what happens when you make a transaction on a blockchain is you send your transaction everyone in the world can see your transaction, and then it's put into a block and committed and executed and on the chain. What if there was a way of having it so before it's put in a block, the transaction is encrypted such that no one can read it? And this is because allows us to, no one can front run you if no one can read the transactions before they're on the blockchain. And so this solution that we created called threshold encryption kind of enables this. And so that's one of the pieces we're really excited about, like solving this like MEV problem that's become this like big thing in the entire recently. And I think we have like one of the best solutions.
Well, that to me is fascinating. And, I'm always looking for ways in which these DeFi protocols could eventually replace or supplant existing financial infrastructure. And in, the market for securities and other financial assets, where the settlement of an asset might take days and be very, old school, the clearing of a transaction does happen in sort of microseconds, right? And the ability to, beat someone to a trade within a millionth or billionth of a second is actually a competitive advantage. So I think about blockchains, and the average clearing time on blocks, especially some of these new ones, is a matter of seconds, but it's not picoseconds yet. And so the idea of creating a trading infrastructure where you're basically putting in orders through a blind pool, in effect, where the market doesn't see like the nature of an order until it's executed, I think is an amazingly powerful innovation, and something that will obviously, I think, drive adoption and interest in Osmo, but also could be applied to a variety of other kinds of marketplaces as well to make them more efficient and more fair too. So I think that's really interesting. I know it's sort of interesting. You said you've been working on Osmo for 9 months, but really it's the culmination, as you said, of all the work that you've been doing in Cosmos and elsewhere. But what does the next 9 months look like? I mean, it's so amazing how quickly things move in this space. You just closed this big round from Paradigm. They're moving, they're looking at AMMs like you outside of Ethereum. What does success look like for you for having this conversation in a year's time?
Yeah, I think the next steps for us are like, we have a wide set of features that we want to ship, such as this privacy and staking stuff. We have a bunch of new DeFi primitives that we're working on. So some things like improved AMMs. We have ideas on like how do we make AMMs more efficient, and like new models of AMMs that we're developing, along with some like features like how do we build in like native leverage features and things like that into the blockchain, into Osmosis. And then I think one of the big ones is interchain UX. So, it's been the culmination of the work we've done so far in Cosmos. It's interesting, like, today, I think everyone in the Cosmos or everyone in the blockchain ecosystem is like starting to think about cross-chain communication right now. You hear about all of these like new bridge projects and stuff spinning up. But like within the Cosmos ecosystem, not only have we been like thinking about it, but we've been like building it, and we've shipped it over the last 2 years. Like we've done cross-chain communication, but there's still like a long way to go. And now we're thinking about like cross-chain composability. And so one of our team's like main focuses is like interchain UX. We want to show the world that like the user experience of a interchain can be as good, if not better, than the user experience on a single chain. And so our team is working on a lot of like composability features right now. How do you make it seamless to transfer between blockchains? How do you make it so I can, do a swap on one blockchain, if I want to do a leverage loop by like swapping and borrowing, and these two things on different chains, how do you make that user experience very seamless? And I think that's sort of like one of our main focuses as well, is like, building out this like interchain UX. And I guess the last piece would just be like, we believe that like, if we really want to replace centralized exchanges with DEXs, centralized exchanges offer they're more than just the trading infrastructure, right? Centralized exchanges offer this like suite of products that are sort of this like package that users get. So along with the trading infrastructure, you get things like, it's a custodian, right? And it's also a, information aggregator, and it's a ID, an initial offering platform. And so it's like all these like different products, like how do we provide those in one place so that like so that the experience on the or fiat on ramps, right? That's another one. So how do we provide all of these in one place so that users, it can serve as a true alternative to what centralized exchanges offer today?
How do you think, and that's a great point too. How do you think about, what do you think is going to be kind of the future of this user experience? Do you think it's going to be, because you talked about composability a lot, which is obviously kind of one way of bringing all of these different features to the user by essentially allowing users to bridge to compound chain for lending and things like that? Or that's like one kind of vision of how this could play out. Another vision that kind of strikes me as kind of obvious is just projects like Osmosis that already have the users trading tokens. They could launch their own sort of lending platforms directly on the Osmosis chain. I guess those are two sort of competing visions of the future. Which one do you sort of subscribe to, or do you think it'll be kind of a hybrid of both?
Yeah, I think it'll be sort of a hybrid of both, and there's also a third thing as well, which I can talk about, which is, so the first one is, yes. So, as I mentioned, there's a lot of cool things that our team is working on in-house, such as like a new model of how to do IDOs, this leverage platform. So we have these like things that we're working on in-house. But at the same time, we understand that we can't build everything, right? And so, to make Osmosis go from just a single product, but to be like an ecosystem, we need more people building products complementary to our core product. And so, where those products exist is open. I think some products might be like big enough that maybe they do want their own chain, and we'll be able to talk to them over IBC. And so maybe something like a lending protocol, or maybe a new, and a great example is something like Terra, right? So Terra, we just connected with them. So Terra is like one of the biggest decentralized stablecoins in the world right now. And so they just activated their IBC protocol. And, now it's like, okay, instead of us building a native stablecoin, it's like, okay, they have a great stablecoin that has wide adoption. Why don't we just, work with them to bring, allow UST to become like this like native base pair for the Osmosis ecosystem. And it's like a win-win for both of us. And then the third option, so this middle ground is, having ways of people, external parties building things on top of the Osmosis chain as well. So there's this like smart contracting framework called CosmWasm, which was, built on the Cosmos SDK. And what we call is, importing some like a CosmWasm onto Osmosis, but in my opinion, a little bit more of a permissioned way, because we still don't want Osmosis to become this like generalized smart contracting platform. We really want it to be something that's like, so what we do is have sort of a more permissioned mechanism where people who want to deploy new contracts to Osmosis, it has to be voted by governance. So that way, the contracts that are being deployed to Osmosis are things that are complementary to the core. So whether it's a liquidity managers or, leverage platforms that are make sure that they're tightly integrated with the core features of Osmosis.
That's sort of interesting because it's like, on the one hand, this is open source, and a lot of the innovation within blockchain happens from people creating on the margins. But on the other hand, it seems like there's a strategic vision and a direction that you're being quite purposeful in executing on, right?
Yeah, and I think that's why it's important to like have both of these systems, right? Where it's like IBC is this permissionless thing that anyone can connect to Osmosis and start interacting with it. But then, there are things where, it's kind of like this idea of like co-location. If you want a product sitting on the Osmosis chain, like right next to our core functionality, then, we want to make sure there's a certain level of like alignment there.
Right. Andrew, do you have any thoughts? I'm wondering from the layer 2/prophecy DeFi perspective, as it relates to Osmosis. So, one of the things that Prophecy is trying to do is identify, emerging DeFi protocols where your expertise can be helpful to those things in scaling. Are you doing anything in this area yet?
We haven't yet gone into sort of the Cosmos and Osmosis ecosystems as of yet. We've been more kind of in the Polygon, I would say, networks and a little bit kind of in Optimism and Arbitrum. But I think what's really interesting to me about sort of Cosmos is that it's, in a lot of ways, it's very much aligned with sort of Ethereum. Whereas something like Polkadot or I guess Cardano or something like I guess back in the day EOS, they're more, people kind of think of them as Ethereum killers, whereas the Cosmos vision is very, it's kind of a big tent approach to the whole space. And so I think it's a very interesting ecosystem to sort of operate in. And Osmosis is kind of the first, I guess, true Cosmos DeFi ecosystem. And it's obviously, like, you guys have grown so fast since starting. So it's a very exciting ecosystem to sort of research and deploy. And one thing I did want to actually ask you about, because one of the things I think that you guys did so well was bootstrapping the initial liquidity and getting so much interest. And a lot of DeFi projects do sort of traditional airdrops, but you guys did a very interesting thing. You did this quadratic fair drop. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that worked and how that was kind of instrumental in getting bootstrapping liquidity so fast?
Yeah, sure. So we, one thing that's interesting about, launching a new chain is that you need a decentralized token distribution from T equals 0. So, you have a lot of these DeFi protocols will do like some sort of, liquidity mining scheme or like retroactive airdrop, but it's like, that means that you don't have a token distribution at T equals 0. And so that's why we're like, okay, what's the way of doing this? So we thought of like, let's doing an airdrop. And, who did we airdrop to? We airdropped to Atom holders because, they were sort of the ones who helped fund a lot of this infrastructure that like went into making Osmosis possible. And we did this like notion of a quadratic airdrop. And what that means is instead of, you got airdropped Osmo proportional to the square root of the number of atoms in your account at the snapshot time. And what this was for was, we wanted to make sure that like the larger atom holders did get, a bit more, but it was like scaled down a bit. In large part because, a large portion of the tokens are being distributed through this like liquidity mining program and stuff. And so because of that, we knew that a large portion of the liquidity mining rewards will be going to like the whales, right? And so that's why in the initial distribution, we wanted a way of like, getting, nudging it a little bit in favor of the smaller users so that, it becomes more fair once like the whales start accumulating through like liquidity mining. And I think it was cool because it like got a lot of people interested. And it's worth noting that like the amount of the airdrop is actually, in the grand scheme of things, is actually kind of small. So, there's a total of 50 million tokens airdropped, but there's actually a maximum supply of Osmo of 1 billion. And so that's only 5%, right, of the maximum supply at the end of time. And the reason was, I see this airdrop sort of as a invite, it's like, or a call to action where it's like, all these users got their airdrop and it's like an invitation of like, hey, you have this Osmo now, why don't you bring over your atoms and put them in a liquidity pool together? And it's like, and that's really the real distribution scheme, is this like liquidity mining program that's like ongoing. And we want to make sure it's like active, incentivized users. So one thing that's pretty cool is to actually claim your airdrop. Users had to do this like, we gamified it a little bit where they had to do a series of like activities. So, it was swapping, LPing, staking, and voting in a governance proposal. And so every time users did one of those activities, they got 20% of their airdrop. And then they got 20%, for free upfront. But so that way it like also acted as this like sort of educational process where, I think we've built like a really fun and easy to use product, but this is how we get people to like, hey, try out the product. And so, yeah, I think that worked out pretty well.
I would say so.
And then any users that don't claim it within 6 months, their airdrop gets taken from them and put into the community pool so it could be like reinvested to grow the ecosystem.
Yeah, I love that for so many reasons. We talked a little bit before in the past about governance issues around token holder apathy. So the fact that there's an incentive and disincentive in a way to get involved is really interesting. I also think that, rewarding people for being large holders is reasonable, but to within a reason, right, to a point. And I think that the distribution probably helped to encourage holders of various sizes to start staking and LPing to Osmosis, because I think a lot of people were kind of surprised, and very pleasantly so, at how much Osmo they received as a result. I'm speaking on behalf of a friend here. No, but I just think it's all been really well done, and I think that obviously the future is uncertain, and there's lots that you still want to achieve, but I think it's been a really great start. And I think this has probably been a helpful episode too for some of our non-crypto folks, if only to understand that just how far flung and how widespread the innovation is in the space. I think a lot of people are on a journey where they've learned about Bitcoin, they've learned about Ethereum. Now they understand that there are all these different DeFi applications being built on top of platforms like Ethereum, but that there's this wide world out there, and some really exciting things happening in it. And I think that Sunny, you and Ethan and the other original team from Cosmos and other projects have really helped to grow the pie, so to speak, in terms of what's possible in DeFi. So that concludes our episode for today. This has been so awesome. Congrats on the big funding round. I know that you will put that to work, and I think Paradigm and the other folks that are involved are great partners. And of course, we would love to be helpful as always in any way that we can. But we just appreciate you joining us today, taking the time, and good luck next week. Anything you want to say or plug before we sign off here?
No, just thank you guys for having me on. And there's a lot of cool stuff like coming along in the Cosmos ecosystem, not even just from our team, just from the community has just been amazing. And so stay tuned for the cool stuff coming from them as well.
And where can people find you? You're on Twitter, obviously. I know that. What's your handle? Yeah,
so my handle is Sunny A97. And then the Osmosis account is Osmosis Zone. And yeah, that's that's best place for like updates. We have active Telegram and Discord. And then if you want to keep up with the latest stuff going on, probably gov.osmosis.zone. So that's like the forum, and it's like one of the most active like governance forums I've seen.
Great. Awesome. All right. Well, that concludes today's episode of DeFi Decoded. I'm Alex Tapscott here with Andrew Young. And thanks to Sunny for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much.
The information contained herein does not constitute an offer or solicitation by anyone in the United States or in any other jurisdiction in which such an offer or solicitation is not authorized, or to any person to whom it is unlawful to make such an offer or solicitation. Prospective investors who are not residents in Canada should contact their financial advisor to determine whether securities of the funds may be lawfully sold in their jurisdiction.